Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey everybody, welcome in to another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. Shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City, making connections that matter. If you're in the hunt for a job or a resource, check them out. Love partnering with them. And I love the guest that I have on today. He's a repeat guest and a guy that I wanted to have on because when I last talked to him on the podcast, we've talked plenty of times since, his world was different and he's moving up in the world and doing a lot of big things. I've said, and I'll continue to say on this podcast, and we'll do so every year, that I like to be able to honor Black History Month in February. I try to have it all be guests of color. Sometimes it could be someone that just supports the African-American community. And the goal is, for me, is just representation, not just in the month of February, but understanding that by just focusing on this in February, it for me leads to a lot of new connections and stories to tell all year long. And so with different perspectives, and we may not even talk about Black History Month, but just having that representation and understanding that I want a variety of people on this podcast. And I would say that my guest today is one that I would be happy to have on any week of the year. And I'm glad to call him a friend as well. Today on Rounding the Bases, I'm joined by a man whose measure of success is in the communities he builds. His name is Drew Eanes, a senior client solutions manager at Dunn Construction. Professionally, he's a key player in development initiatives that enrich the lives of those around him with inspired projects. Philanthropically, he has dedicated years to advancing the missions of nonprofits throughout the metro, cementing his legacy through meaningful change that will keep giving for generations to come. And I would argue that Drew Eanes is really just starting to find some of that legacy and find his voice. Joined right now by my friend Drew Eanes, who, if you catch us on YouTube, is wearing a great old school Len Dawson shirt, that classic sitting on the sidelines, smoking the cigarette in the game. That's a good choice for you, Drew. A little flashback there. How are you?
Lenny the Cool, man. I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me on. It's been it's almost 5 years since the last time I was on here. Lots changed for you and for me in positive ways. So
yeah. Well, that was pandemic times, and you were an engineer then, and I guess still, but now you're in this big world, right? I mean, J.E. Dunn's a big player, and you've moved up in the world. You've earned all of that. But when I say that you're finding your voice, and we'll talk about that in a moment, I think that you are fine. Yeah, the voice was always there. Well, maybe the voice wasn't there. The intent was there. The heart was there. The passion for community was there. But I think that as you climb the ranks and you get older, and you like all of us, you meet more people, and you do start to find that voice and the confidence in saying, wait a minute, I can make a difference. So I want to get to that in a moment, but tell me, since we last talked, I mean, via podcast, about the big jump that you made a number of years ago now to J.E. Dunn.
Yeah, so last time I was on here, there was a lot going on in our world, but also in my life. I think I had a 1-year-old son, a 3-year-old daughter. I was in the energy efficiency space at a company that was based out of Seattle. And at the time was talking about with a couple of friends of mine, some philanthropic endeavors that we were looking to start. And since then, I've been able to succeed in all of those things. I now have a 6-year-old boy and an 8-year-old daughter. And life has kind of blossomed. To your point, I think everybody in their 20s, early 30s tries to identify, their skill set, what their passions, what their strengths are. And I think I went through that and didn't really know what that would turn into. But over the course of that time period, I really narrowed down that I want to make as much of an impact for as many people as I can here in the community that's given so much to me here in Kansas City, and took the initiative to put myself in some of those situations, and ended up at J.E. Dunn about a year after I did that podcast with you. And we kicked off some philanthropic foundations and funds that have created a lot of success, and fortunate to take that passion into a couple of other community endeavors as well. And it's been quite the ride and been a lot of fun. But let's talk about you real quick. It's a big week for you. You got a book out this week, and I'm really proud just of you because you and I were talking about being on this podcast back in 2020. We were sitting at a bar, and the baseball season hadn't started yet. And, you were really concerned about that in terms of how that's affecting you. That's your livelihood. And so you started talking about how, you have a gift for writing. You have a gift for this podcast that you had just started at the time. So to see kind of where Rounding the Bases has gone and what success you've been able to do with a couple of books you've written, I'm proud of you as well. We've both been able to do a lot in a short time period.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. And, it's still, you and I are recording this the week that this new book came out. I said I was going to promote this book. I forgot to do it. Small Ball, Big Dreams, available on the website, joelgoldbergmedia.com, as well as on Amazon. But I'm people that know me know that I'm not someone that gives myself as much credit as everyone else. I hope that some of that is humility. Some of it is just like, I don't believe what other people are always saying, but I'm proud of this book. I'm proud of the spirit of this book. It's about grit and resilience. And so many of my guests on this podcast, all of them, show grit and resilience. You've showed grit and resilience, and you look at, I see where you're at right now, and I'm like, I think you're just getting started, which is awesome. You're young. When I say you're young, it means you're a lot younger than me, but you've also been around the block and you've done this too. I'm curious what the world has been like at J.E. Dunn for you as you find your footing and have found your footing there, because suddenly you jump into a bigger pond, right? And with generations of history and reputation here in Kansas City and around the country, I'm curious what that learning curve was like for you and how long it took you to really feel settled.
Yeah, I think part of my success is really putting myself out there to people and organizations that are like-minded. And what I mean by that is J.E. Dunn, we celebrated our 100th year last year. It started right here in Kansas City in 1924. And I was fortunate enough to work with J.E. Dunn in my 20s when I was in the energy efficiency business. We did a large project with Kansas Community College. And during that time frame, I really enjoyed the culture of the people that I was able to work with. And so obviously growing up in this city, I knew who J.E. Dunn was, but when I really got an understanding for the culture and the people and their framework of always wanting to give back, it's something I've always been really interested in if there was ever an opportunity. And so it's a great culture fit. I think the company does a really good job from a hiring perspective of hiring people who don't just want to live in a box of what they're hired to do, but do that at a very high level while also focusing on your personal interests and passions in the community and giving back. So they give 10% of all revenue that we make, we give back to the community, and nowhere else on a larger scale than here in Kansas City. And so it's been easy for me to get ingrained in the just executing my job responsibilities, but they're giving me the leeway to do a lot of other things outside of my job that helps me with my job, but also helps the community as a whole. So it was really easy for me to get ingrained in that culture when I started here in 2021. I couldn't be happier. And, because we're giving back to the community, our bottom line is also being affected in a positive way. We've had record years each year since I started there. And we hope to continue that in the next couple of years.
I got to imagine that sort of like these two kind of worlds of yours that have collided, right? The work world and the civic world, and they've sort of meshed into one, have been a perfect fit for you, because the beauty among many of J.E. Dunn, and then you talk about the culture. I mean, that goes all the way back to the Dunn family values passed on from generation to generation, is that it gives you this bigger platform in a world, in a profession that you're already in, right? But now you're with the big boys, which means that you have a louder voice and that you can do the things in the community. I mean, I believe, knowing you the way that I do, that your true passion and heart, beyond loving what you do for work, is helping communities. And so this, I'm guessing, enables you to do both, right? And it enables you to do what you're good at from a work standpoint, enables you to hopefully get compensated in a way that enables you to live a comfortable life while amplifying that voice. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you and I talked about this last time we met, but I've really developed a framework for how I live my life. So, what is Drew's personal framework? Well, I've always been really good at making friends and building relationships with people. So I take that ability and I tie it into my passion for the community and things and, that I've experienced, that I've seen. And if I can tie those two things together and work to galvanize and bring a group of people together, then we'll be able to deliver results that'll make this city better. Right. So all of the different leadership positions that I've had over the last few years, a lot of people tell me it's complicated. I'm doing too much. And there's some truth to that. But I also believe my framework's the same with any of those things. So I don't think it's that complicated because I use my ability to build relationships with people and my passion for whatever it is, whether it's a construction project, philanthropy, social venture, entrepreneurship, economic development, and bring a group of people together. And together we can change things for a positive fashion in Kansas City. And so to your point, J.E. Dunn and the stuff that I do outside of J.E. Dunn is very interconnected. And I think both J.E. Dunn and both my nonprofit philanthropic work have benefited because of all of those roles that I'm in.
Where did I know you and I've talked about this over the years, and I think we probably talked about it on the first podcast. Where did this? I think most people that you and I know are civic minded or want to help out with charities. I mean, I think most of us, all of us have that, and some of us really know where we want to spend that time. Some of us are searching for it, and but I think this is who you are, and I'm just curious where that came from. Like, did that come to you on your own? Did you get that from your parents? I'm guessing it's from your parents, but where did this where was this fuse lit? Where did it come from?
I think it's a combination of knowing where I come from, where my family comes from, and the work that my ancestors and my family have put in to help provide and give me the opportunities that my brother and I had. And certainly both my mom and my dad were huge influencers in terms of shaping who I am and what I care about. My mom, when they moved here from Cleveland, her first job was at Truman Medical Center. And she's always had a gift for making people feel calm, at ease. People go to the hospital, it's usually not for a good thing. And she's taken that skill set with, hospice care, health care, and she always makes people feel good. And I've always noticed that about her. And, with my dad, something I remember him telling me very young is do as much as you can for as many as you can for as long as you can. Right? So you take both of those mindsets and it helped frame, my mindset growing up where I grew up, but also understanding, the Ohio piece of where I come from and some of the challenges that I see today still. And then I see in the urban core here in Kansas City today and kind of shaped who I am. I don't think it doesn't matter what you look like. If you give any human being access to an opportunity, those communities are going to succeed and benefit from it. And so that's kind of, going back to my framework, it certainly was shaped by both of my parents, my background, and my own experiences of seeing the good and the bad of this world. And, what can I personally do about it to try to change it?
I know that on my episode next week, with a little bit of a roundtable, I always have on my friend Andre Davis. Andre and our friend Chandra Clark, who's out of Boston, used to live here, and we've already recorded it, and we decided to have a discussion. Like, they're really the only discussion that I have that is specifically dedicated towards Black History Month, and it may not even be brought up otherwise. But I want to bring this up because even though that conversation is happening after this one, I know what we talked about. We decided not to make it political, although some will accuse it of being political, I suppose. And just thought, like, how do we have a message of hope for people, for humanity, and how do we push forward? I mean, so much of this has become politics, and so much of this to me has been stories being hijacked and misunderstandings. And so, like, for me, I just don't think I could walk around being pissed off at everybody all day long. And this is coming from the white guy that's not as affected, by the Black community or communities of color. Yet, as you know, I hope and want to always be an advocate. But part of that to me involves storytelling. And you live in a world professionally that is mostly white. Yeah. Right. I mean, I think the construction world is not all, but certainly up at the higher levels is more white. And I know J.E. Dunn's committed diversity and inclusion. But how do you better tell this story when you have a greater voice now? I have a greater voice now. Because to me, if you're telling this story in a way of us versus them, whatever us versus them represents, you're never going to get anywhere at all. And I think that you have to let people come to their conclusions on their own. I'm reading Mel Robbins' book right now, The Let Them Theory, and it's really powerful, and it really involves like not letting other people hijack your thoughts or not letting where they're at affect you, and you can't really affect them. You've got to give them that space. So how do you find that balancing act? Because you do have that voice in front of a lot of people. Oftentimes, even though you're working on the inner city and you're working in the city, trying to better this community, but yet oftentimes you're going to be speaking to a wide audience. How do you bring people together?
Yeah, I think growing up and throughout my life, I've had the opportunity to meet a very large, diverse set of people: white, black, brown, gay, old, young. And ultimately, I found that the majority of those people are really good people who want to make a difference. Right. So it doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like. Now, there are things that are important in terms of understanding who you are and where you come from that you can bring to the table to make change. But we're human beings. And so I think, to your point, people make a lot of assumptions and, want to get divisive. And if you don't believe what I believe in, then you're wrong. It's like, how can you say that in a world of 7 billion, whatever? I might be wrong on that. It's probably more than that now. I find it kind of ridiculous to judge other people because they don't believe what I believe. Now, I'm going to go out in the world and use my framework to go try to make a difference. Right. If you want to go try to make a difference, let's talk about what that means to you so I can understand your perspective of what making a difference means. And let's go do that together. Right. But in terms of, hating on another person because of where they come from or what they look like, I'm not about that. And I think ultimately that's destructive. And so whether you're, Republican, Democrat, black, white, if you can really understand another person's perspective and where they come from and why they believe the things that they believe and start there, it's going to take away some of that angst at the beginning of that conversation where you can actually have a conversation, right? A lot of times people judge and point the finger. Now, in what situation in any, whether you're married, your friendship, work-wise, if you point the finger at somebody and say, you're doing this wrong, how is that going to be received? It's going to be received defensively. Right. But if you can really get to understand another person and their own perspective, right, it usually softens the other side and you're able to connect on what you do have in common. Right. If you can find the human element of what you have in common and collectively you have all these different perspectives and people that look different and you're able to bring those people together, you're able to get more done. And I'm not saying that in theory. I've seen it because I've lived it and I've been able to lead organizations and boards that bring a lot of different backgrounds and people and perspectives together. And in every one of those cases, we've succeeded and the community is better because of that. Right. So I just don't think life's too short to be divisive and angry, so I try not to be that way, even if, people around me may be. I can control what I can control.
That's right. It's funny, like so much of what you're saying is what Andre was saying on the podcast that'll run next week and the week after yours, and control the controllable. You're an athlete. Well, I was gonna say former athlete, once an athlete, always an athlete. I don't know. You were a college athlete, and how long have you heard control what you can control from a sports standpoint? I mean, it really applies to everything, right? And so I just think there's this fine line, and by the way, no matter what you believe in, there's this fine line of staying informed, but not letting yourself get pulled in so deep that you become so angry or so upset that you forget. Like we're not talking to each other anymore. And for me, that's one of the beauties of what's happened with my speaking business and my podcast is that, on TV, I speak to people. I don't get to hear from them. But the beauty of this is that and the networking that comes with it and all that, like that book is a product of the people that I meet. And so the more people you meet and the more diverse people that you meet, that's why I like to do Black History Month. That's why I like to do Women's History Month in March, because it assures me, the more people that I meet that look different than me, that have different backgrounds than me, open up doors to meet more people that don't look like me. And then suddenly you're not hanging out in a group of people or in a network where everybody's the same.
Yeah.
And that's how you start learning different perspectives. And oh, by the way, like, we should want to hear from people that don't quite get what's going on. Like, if you don't understand or don't like or don't believe in DEI, then why? Let's talk about it and let's understand each other.
Exactly. Like, I'm not going to come from a place of defensiveness because someone doesn't agree with DEI. I want to understand why they don't believe in DEI, right? Because I have a different perspective and I've seen the benefits of it in a lot of different instances, from bringing different types of people together for a common cause. My brother told me this quote a long time ago when he was playing soccer: be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Don't stay in your comfort zone all the time, because you're never really going to learn too much if you stay around people or in situations and that's all you know. There's nothing wrong with that, but life can be a lot more adventurous and fun if you get outside of that box and push yourself and ask questions and have this sense of constant curiosity. You will benefit from it. Your life will be more fulfilled and more fun by seeking out what there is in the world.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And you talked about your background and the influence of your parents, and you bounced around a little bit as a kid, right? Too. I mean, I think grew up in Florida, but went to high school here in Kansas City, where, if I remember correctly, you were one of maybe 3 black kids or something like that.
Yeah. I was usually the only black kid in my class, or one of a few, right? So that helped me understand like how to get along with other people. I wouldn't say I didn't have a choice, but I embraced it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you had a choice. It would have been, it's not a great choice. The numbers weren't really with you, but that also shaped you too, right? And maybe shaped the people that you grew up around. I mean, I remember you telling me some stories about just some of the comments that might be made from friends that didn't mean anything by it. They didn't know, right? And so hopefully, as you become more mature and you have those conversations, that they learn, and then you learn, and all that too. How did growing up in a predominantly white world in terms of high school affect or shape who you are? Your parents, you talked about how they shaped you and their background and your ancestors, but what did it mean to be thrown into that world where you were different?
Yeah, I mean, I think race and what I look like was one construct of growing up where I grew up in Kansas City, right? The reason that my parents moved our family to Johnson County on multiple occasions is because my parents wanted to give their kids the best education that they could, right? It didn't matter what you look like. Blue Valley schools still are high performing, and they were back when I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. And so, my parents, who grew up in a predominantly black community, they didn't really understand some of the things that may come with that, but it also helped my brother and I, one, just get an understanding for different types of people and interest, and embrace that. And to your point, I had a lot of friends that started to embrace, coming over to our house and listening to like Death Row record albums and Snoop Dogg and the things that we did, and like the Temptations and old school, and the kind of food that we had, and like it was awesome, right? And I've had a lot of great relationships that I still have today growing up in that community. So like race, education, socioeconomic income. I understand, especially the older I get, how much my parents sacrificed to give my brother and I those opportunities. We had the best sports leagues. We had everything that we could have had to be successful, right? So my dad was like, there's no excuses, right? You will be successful. I'm giving you the tools. Don't mess it up, right? And so, being one of those only black kids, like, it is what it is. I embraced it, right? And I still am very passionate and like reached out to my own culture and people as a child, and still have a lot of great relationships there. But it taught me to be adaptable, and to understand that people are people, and we don't have as much differences as a lot of people think we do. And growing up where I grew up was a beautiful thing. Also, with the understanding of where I come from, you blend all that together, I think, is a product of why I'm doing some of the things that I'm doing now.
It is beautiful because you have these. It's all one big background. It's not two backgrounds. It all meshed into who you are, right? Who you became, and you know, and you're raising biracial kids too, and so they'll experience some things similar and different to you that you did. But I sit there and I think so much about the work that you're doing in the city, and I wonder how much you feel. And then I want to talk more of the specifics of what you're doing, but how much that brings you back to your roots. If you grew up with some privilege, more privilege than what your parents did, in part because of, you know, talk about this all the time, like, that's different than white privilege because you still have the color of your skin and you may still get pulled over for reasons I wouldn't, or whatever it might be, right? We can go on and on with that. But I think that you got to experience some of the privilege that your parents were able to create for you. But now when you go in and you're doing the work in the inner city, how much does that bring you back to maybe what they grew up with or your ancestors? And how much does that keep you in touch with your history and past generations?
A lot. I think, you know, when I was a kid, we went to St. James United Methodist Church. It's off of Paseo. Our Congressman, Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, he baptized me in 1986. So I grew up in that church. And so that's one instance of, you know, my parents making sure that they ingrained my brother and I in the urban core community. You know, we went to get our haircuts there. There's a place called Sheer Experience off of Prospect. There's a lot of experiences my parents made sure that they did to get us in with, you know, other Black kids and give us those experiences. I want to do the same thing for my kids and make sure that they understand the differences in terms of where they live versus the urban core, and they're beautiful things in both. Ultimately, with me, in terms of what I'm doing, there always was a sense when I was a kid living where I live that I wanted to be more of a part of that culture, right? And understanding where, you know, what things I experienced in Cleveland, I wanted to be a part of that more. I didn't have that. There was a gap there growing up. And so it's amazing now to be able to interact and build more relationships in the urban core, both on the KCK side, KCMO, wherever, and really understand and build relationships with these brilliant people that I get to work with and figure out, because of some of the positions of influence that I have, how I can make those communities better. You know, it's one of those things where if I was given the tools to succeed and have succeeded, I'd better do something about it for people that look like me to provide opportunities, right? If I can provide more opportunities, just like I was given, then everybody's going to benefit from a whole. And I don't just mean Black people, but this community will benefit as a whole if I can provide as many opportunities as I can to people that look like me, but also that don't look like me, people who just want to do good and make a difference.
I love that. And it all starts with relationships. We can make headway on this stuff when you build those relationships. That's what you're doing. And I know you and I have talked about this, but how surreal just the way things have come. I don't know if I call it full circle with Emmanuel Cleaver. I mean, this is a man now at 80 years old that has been a congressman since I think like 2005. He's pretty legendary in all circles. So to have been baptized by him and now being with him at major events in the city and being honored and all of that. I mean, I don't know how he thought about it. I'm sure it made him proud to see what you have become. What does it mean to you to be walking in the I don't want to say shadows, but walking in the same circles with Congressman Cleaver?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's surreal. I was fortunate enough to receive an award towards the end of last year from the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. And right before I was to receive that award, he walks right by me. I'm like, this is surreal. And he sits at the table next to me. Right? And they're giving me my award, and I'm standing up, and I see and I look at him, and he's nodding his head, you know, like a proud father or an uncle. And I teared up a little bit that night because it is really surreal when you have somebody who's given so much to his community in a number of different ways, and not just his community, but his country, right? And it's a guy that I've always looked up to. He's a really funny person. He always made me laugh, and he inspired me every time that I was able to be around him, right? So now to be able to see him watching me doing some of the things that he was able to do, it definitely brings life full circle. And I'm extremely proud that hopefully he and other people who have invested in me over the course of my life are proud of me as well.
the awards that you've won, and I'll talk about them because I know you won't talk about all of them, but I mean, 2022 J.E. Dunn City Idealist of the Year Award, 2022 Greater Kansas Chamber ACE Award recipient, 2022 Kansas City Business Journal 20 to Know in KC Construction, 23 KC Biz Journal Next Gen Leader. I mean, it goes on and on. It's amazing stuff. It's all well deserved. You've earned every bit of it. As I said before, you have that voice. But I just look at what you're doing, and you talked about it before, and some of these projects in the city. Founding board member of the Hadley Project, and then co-founder, vice chair of KC People's Fund. What are some of the goals going forward right now? What is along with all the J.E. Dunn projects that you're involved in? What about civically? What are some of the big things on the radar right now?
KC People's Fund is looking to kick off grant making this year. So the Hadley Project, we started in 2021. It was kind of a 3-year experiment to really disrupt philanthropy in a positive way. So, do things like unrestricted grant making. So if you got to pay a light bill, go pay a light bill. Multi-year funding with these grassroots nonprofits to ensure that they get the funding necessary to help grow and scale, which hopefully and has gotten them into the doors of these larger foundations because we worked with them, and it's done a lot of good in the urban core. And so we repitched to get funded in 2023 and got $50 million to start the KC People's Fund. So the last few years, we were kind of going slow to go fast, making sure that our processes, how we grant into the community, how we partner with the community. We want to make philanthropy a lot less patriarchal. So people, like me in a board seat aren't making all the decisions. The people that live in the community that understand the issues better than I do should make the decisions on where that capital should go. And so we've been working really hard. We're finishing up our website as we speak right now, and hope to kick that off with our first cycle of grant making with this new foundation this year. We're going to target Jackson County and Wyandotte County in 2025 because I think our model is adaptable. So we're going to try some stuff, see what sticks, and react accordingly. But we intend on continuing to do a lot of good and give people opportunities. From the J.E. Dunn side, favorite project that we recently were awarded was a South Loop 670 project. So it's if anybody knows where Lowe's Hotel is downtown, there's a big highway, I-35 670, right under that. And so we're going to build an underground tunnel in an urban park that's going to connect the business district with the crossroads area. And there's a couple of precedents across the country, but Clyde Warren Park down in Dallas is one of them. And I think that happened in 2012. And they've seen $3.8 billion of economic development around that park since it was built. So it's a catalyst 100-year type of project in Kansas City that I had the opportunity to lead from our business development side. And I can't wait to get that done. We'll see if it happens before the World Cup or not. But I can't wait till that's done and to bring my kids to say I was a small part of that someday.
I can't wait to see it either. I wish there was a stadium on one end of there, but that's just my own personal opinion. There'll be one somewhere, and so stay tuned. You
probably know more than I do about that, but hopefully they make a decision this year, one way or the other.
I think they will. I don't know that much more, maybe a little bit more. There are people in your world that know more than both of us. I could say that, but either way. All right, I want to get to the baseball theme questions because maybe they've changed over the years. Professionally speaking, what now is the biggest home run that you've hit?
I think the 670 project was awesome. Around that same time, I was able to win some work in the 18th and Vine district. For those that don't know about 18th and Vine, it's an old historic jazz district that had a lot of African-American influence in the heyday, Tom Pendergast era of Kansas City. And so we're looking to redevelop that area and bring it back to the prominence that it once had when the Kansas City Monarchs were right down the street. And so we're working on a garage right now, just with some of the attractions that is hopefully going to bring people to the 18th and Vine area. There's got to be some place for people to park, but we're looking at a number of different projects. I'm not going to say any of them specifically, but we're talking a lot with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, the American Jazz Museum, talking about what other local attractions that we can do. We like to partner with my friend Elliot Ivory and Vine Street Brewery quite a bit at J.E. Dunn just to support them. So, one of the reasons I went to J.E. Dunn is to be able to work on and in iconic places that I grew up with. Like I used to go to Peachtree all the time off 18th and Vine, right? So now to be able to work there and do something there to help people and make it, give it prominence again, it's pretty surreal to be a part of. Like Starlight Theater is another one that's a client of ours. These are places that I went to growing up, and now I get to work with them and make those places better. So it's pretty cool.
It's really cool. I'm so excited to see what happens there as well. I just joined the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum board, and so I feel like I'm going to be more plugged in that area. Already love that area, but I've never, I never saw what it was like in the old days. I just hear all the great stories from Bob Kendrick, and and that was the place. And so I can't wait to see what's happening with that. How about a swing and a miss along the way, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I like to think of anything that I could consider a failure isn't necessarily a miss.
Yeah,
because I've always learned a lot. I've never been a person to be shy about taking risks. And I think that's what's driven me to be successful. If I could go back in time in my late 20s, there was a lot going on in my life, but I was at a Fortune 3 company at the time, Chevron, who I had interned with since I was like 18 years old. And I was just looking to try something new. And so I went to this small startup called NetChemia, and they created a position for me that they hadn't had before. I think I was like the 27th employee or something like that, and learned a bunch. But because I didn't know what I didn't know, I don't think the role turned out as well as all of us kind of thought it would. And so they shifted my role back to just being a producer in sales, and I became one of the top salespeople. But at the same time, I took a pay cut the year that I was getting paid. We were talking about kids in the next year or two. I was talking about going to grad school. There were all these big changes and decisions that I had to make at the time. And so to lose, some of that income and things not going the way that I wanted to, and leaving a Fortune 3 company where I was pretty comfortable at the time felt terrible. Right. But in hindsight, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I started to get extremely involved with my passion of giving back to the community. I remember doing the Man of the Year campaign for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I faced adversity head on, and I succeeded after facing that adversity, and met a lot of great people. All of those people that I worked with at that startup are doing extremely well now. And so it helped me grow as a human, as an individual. And I got connected to other aspects of Kansas City that I wouldn't have had I just stayed comfortable. And so I guess the point of all that is don't be afraid to take risks, and don't ever look at yourself as a failure. Get back up and keep going.
Well said. No doubt about it. And sometimes you can't see what the end looks like until you start that journey. What's small ball to you, Drew?
Being authentic and personable, and taking the gifts that every single one of us has. Some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, but we all have a gift to give, right? So figure out what that gift is and partner it with your passion, and just go do it. If you can tie who you are as a person for stuff that you care about, one, you're going to enjoy it more, you're going to have more fun, and you're probably going to be more successful because you're going to be more passionate about that end goal. I don't think life is that hard. Take who you are as a person, don't try to be anybody else, and stick to your passions, tie those two things, and go make a difference.
Love all of that. And that is advice, by the way, that applies to everyone. That is legit small ball advice. That is universal, and easier said than done. If you're paying attention to it, it's very doable. Okay. 4 final questions as we round the bases. Are you still messing with the barbecue world at all?
Yeah, I'm trying. Still a lifelong member of the prestigious Mad Cow Angry Beaver barbecue team. Most of us have little kids now. And so we don't get to see each other as much as we used to. And so when we do, we overindulge usually, and we don't do very well in the competition. But it's not about our ribbons. It's about the relationships, like you said earlier. So it's a blast. Lenexa Barbecue, June, come by our tent. We do a couple of other competitions, but yeah, we're still alive and kicking. We may get a new smoker because we definitely need one because we're not doing very well. But we'll see what happens.
What's the date on that? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's usually the 4th weekend in June. I'll send it to you. But
all right. I'm just looking because, I always want to see the Royals calendar. If it's the last weekend of June, that would make sense. The Royals are home against the Dodgers, so maybe I'll be able to come over to Lenexa and check it out.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a text, but if you can make it, that would be fun.
And for everybody else, look it up. You'll find it. All right. Second question as we round the bases. I'm going to go lighthearted on this one because my executive producer, Ashley, finds stuff. And so she sent me a screenshot from a few years ago of a little sticker or something, a pink sticker that says, "If being bad at fantasy football is wrong, I don't know how to be right." And it's got a great shot of you with some funky red sunglasses and all these like little pretty pony unicorn type of things. And it says fantasy football loser. Have things gotten better for you?
I didn't finish last this year, and so I gave my trophy that had a unicorn on it that I was responsible for keeping at my office for a year. That's now in the hands of somebody else.
Did Adam Miller lose?
It wasn't Adam. He almost did.
Okay.
But he got by. So it's somebody else who's a very funny gentleman. So I'm looking forward to going to his office and seeing that trophy. The group as a whole is still kind of mad at me because when I finished last, the punishment was for me to sign up for the ACT, and I haven't done that yet. So I'm still responsible for doing that. I think if I don't do that, then I might have to run a lemonade stand at one of the first Fridays coming up in the next few months. So, look out for me.
That's good.
Buy my lemonade.
That's fun stuff. If you had told me that Adam was the one that lost, I would have seen if we could pipe him in live into this thing just to mess with him, because the response. Adam's about as high energy of a human being as you could meet. I'm just always looking for ways to dig at him, but he just throws it back and Mr. Positive.
We would definitely give him a call if he finished last. He was close.
All right.
He got it together. He got it together in December.
I lost in both championships this year, so not an awful year. Okay, third question as we round the bases. It's just a fun one. I mean, you're a former college track athlete, and so you know a little bit about how this works. The Noah Lyles, Tyreek Hill thing. You played football back in high school too. I think if I remember, you were like a punt returner, kick returner, probably wide receiver if you were doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Tyreek, the cheetah, there aren't many like him. But, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, there's no chance that he could ever beat a track star like that. What do you see?
You wouldn't think so. Track and football are two very different games. I remember being able to play hurt when I played football. You may have a strain or something because you got a lot of pads on. And if you're fast, you're fast. You're going to look fast on the football field. Track is something completely different. Every single person is extremely fast, and you can't perform at a high level if you're hurt, right? So my college teammates will make fun of me because I tore my hamstring a lot. And you can't really run a 60-meter dash or 100-meter dash if your hamstring doesn't work. And so they're machines. The way that they take care of their body, what they put in their body, their training regimen. Noah Lyles is a bad man. And I would love to see that race. I think they should do it for charity or something. But if I have my pick, my money's on Noah. If Noah gets on the football field, then, obviously you got to stick with Tyreek. But, track is no joke. People say it's not that much of a sport, but these guys and women are machines, and they're incredible.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would say it's not much of a sport. I just think that most of us, me included, don't understand all the technique and everything that goes into it. All we see, especially for a short race, is 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever it is, and we don't understand. Then when you start hearing, at least for me, like watching the Olympics, when you start hearing them breaking down like just one stride and where they got it right or wrong, I'm like, how do they know that? So
I was watching that race, and I saw the sign that Noah Lyles had, and that's the great thing about track. Like, there's a lot of confident people who talk a lot of mess. I'm like, that's part of the culture.
Yeah, you have to be, right?
It makes it more fun.
Yeah, I mean that's like the equivalent of a boxing match, and whoever lands the first punch wins. It's like, there's no time to mess around. It's go, and exactly. It's instantaneous. So the trash talk comes with it. It's part of the game. Final question: the walk off. I asked you about the home run. How about a pipe dream? How about a dream project? It doesn't have to be specific, but what is something that one day you would love to have your hands on?
I want to teach. I think. Like I said earlier, in terms of my framework, one of my talents is to be able to build relationships with people. And when I build those relationships, I've always seemed to have really in-depth and personal conversations that people want to open up to me about. And so I feel like I have the ability to provide inspiration or influence to people to make their lives better. And so I think that would be pretty cool to do in a classroom someday. And just, I don't know what class I would teach. I'm not very good at math or science, but I am experienced at like wisdom and life and experiences, and using my own personal experiences to give back to somebody else. I think that would be pretty cool. I was talking to a friend the other day about maybe going to a junior college or something like that. But someday, I think I still have a lot more to learn and experience before I get there. But once all of that's kind of culminated, I would love to see what I can do to give back to the youth and people trying to better themselves.
I know whatever it is, it'll be something that you're passionate about, and it's something that I don't know. I mean, I think I asked you when we went out for beers recently if maybe you'd want to go into politics one day. I wouldn't wish that upon you, but I could see you doing well with that too. I don't know. Maybe you could succeed Congressman Cleaver one day, but then again, he might do it forever. Who knows? So whatever it is, I know you'll do it well. You'll do it with passion, and you'll make an impact. And it's good to have you back on the podcast. It's great to see everything that you're doing, and keep doing it. I know you will. Drew, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Well, likewise, and congrats. Go buy Joel's book. I'm gonna do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.